Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy, also known as ETCG1 when posting videos to this channel, and I start things off on ETCG1 with, hey, if it's your birthday, happy birthday! Please enjoy this digital cake on top of this Toyota. Yeah, the Toyota behind me is sort of inspiration for today's video topic, which is writing estimates. Which, you know, even if you're a repair customer, this information could be useful to you. I'm not really sure, just to give you, well, an idea, at least into my thought process. I just went through the process of writing up an estimate for this car, which needs some engine work. It broke down in front of the shop about a week or so ago, and I've had a chance to look at it and figure out the stuff that's going on with it. But you're gonna have to wait and see what that's all about when the time comes. But today's ETCG1 video is about writing the estimates. And I always start with parts. I figure out parts and where I can source them. That's like number one, because parts aren't always available at the places depending upon what parts you need. I always put my parts under retail as far as what I list them for. My labor times are often light, but I usually sort of lean towards the side of adding any extra cost or whatever to the parts. But you also have to consider, well, a couple of things. One, if you're like in the Northeast and an area where you have to deal with lots of rust and things like that, you kind of have to take that into consideration. So you need to look the vehicle over. You need to know what the job is and the vehicle that you're working on. Having some experience is super helpful when you go to write estimates, because you know there might be a pattern thing that you run into, like a certain rusty whatever that you know that you have to deal with when you're doing this particular job on this vehicle, that you incorporate in your head and you're saying, I'm going to have to add a little extra time for that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, writing good estimates is about, well, first of all, talking to the customer, and I've said this in the past, more important than anything else, beyond the estimate or whatever, customers need to know what they're spending their money on. So do what you can to try to itemize and break every little bit of it down. And like I said, your familiarity with the job or the vehicle is going to be super helpful in this. You can say, well, in my experience, I've run into X, and we may need this part. We don't need to buy it right now. We won't know anything until I get in there and I open stuff up and look and say, hey, this is bad or this isn't bad. Or you can just chuck it out there as saying, well, there's the potential for this to be bad, and I'm just going to include it into the estimate now, and this way if it is bad, you'll just be prepared for the worst. In other words, like at the end of the day, when you're writing up that estimate, you want to be able to hand it to that customer, and that can be as close to final cost as you can possibly get, if not being under. Don't feel bad about adding a little bit to the cost when you're writing the estimate, because you may end up with a little bit of extra work here and there. But from my experience, customers really hate it when you have to call them up and say, look, you know, I was working and I was taking things apart and I found X, Y, Z, and it's going to cost another $200, $500, whatever dollars. You know, because customers, auto repair doesn't happen in a convenient way. You know, people's cars break down probably at the least convenient time in their life. You know, maybe rent's due, or they got other bills or things that are happening. And if you hit them with a bill that, you know, obviously is unexpected, but that they can't necessarily manage, or they can barely manage, you know, so they'll do whatever they can to try to get the money together to get it fixed so they can get back on the road and back to where they need to be. If you call them up after the fact, after they've gone through the trouble of trying to put all that money together, you're the D-bag. You know what I'm saying? So do what you can to try to overestimate. Under promise and over deliver might be the way to go. And I usually go about my estimates in such a way to where there is a little bit of room there. And if I'm able to, you know, I go through the job, it was easier than I thought or whatever, I'll pass that savings along to the customer, because your estimates are not there to rip people's lips off. Don't like write up a work order or something like that in such a way to where you've hit them so hard that they walk away in shame with their head down. You don't necessarily want that. Be in it for the long term. Be in it to create a customer and a relationship with that customer. And honestly, this comes back on you. It makes your life easier, because next time that customer comes in to see you and they've had your work done and you've done good work, that's why they're coming back. They're more apt to trust you on the next thing. And you develop relationships with these customers, and these relationships are long-term income. So don't go at it in the short term. In other words, don't write up the work order in such a way to where you're going after every single possible thing you can. write it up in such a way to where it's fair, it's reasonable. And think about it if it's your mother's car or somebody that's important to you. Think about it if it's their vehicle or your vehicle, and treat it as such, and treat that customer like that as well. They will appreciate it and they will come back. Like, I can't stress enough, go for the long-term relationship over the, I'm just going to get as much money as I can out of this work order. I know some people that are like that. I think that's a bad approach. I think it's much better to work the long game. Something else I want to add here real quick is prioritization. So you may find a vehicle with a lot of issues, more issues than the customer can afford at that particular time. So it's up to you to try to determine what repairs are necessary now and what repairs can be done later. Once again, going back to that thing, don't necessarily go at it trying to take every cent that they have. Try to maximize the money that they're spending and allow them, in other words, you're their advocate. They don't necessarily understand what's happening with the vehicle, you do. Use that knowledge to help them. Be an advocate for them and their vehicle to try to give them the best plan forward, to try to give them the best repairs that they can get on the other side of it. And once again, if they can't afford something now, they can wait. AC is a big one on my list. That one's all the way down at the bottom. However, I realize there are some climates in some areas and some situations where AC is a necessity. I get it, but it doesn't stop the vehicle from getting from point A to point B, and if that's the priority, well, that's where you put it. But leave it up to the customer to decide if AC is a priority, because if it is, it is. And it's their vehicle. Don't, if that's what they decide, let them decide that, but do it with some notations on the work order or whatever when you're done with it, stating that you informed the customer of the issue, they made this choice, and you can wash your hands of it. But I did want to put that in there. Try to prioritize repairs so that you don't hit them all at once with something, and it gives them the opportunity to come back. It also, when they come back, it gives you the opportunity to monitor the work that you've done and make sure that it's still valid, it's still working. So that needed to be said as well. Anyway, that's my take on writing up estimates and work orders. I hope it was informative and helpful to you. How about I throw it back to you? Are you a professional, and how do you go about writing up those estimates and those work orders? Give us your tips and tricks. As a customer, how do you feel about the things that I've said? How have you reacted to some of the work that you've had done in the past? Maybe you started watching my channel because you had a bad experience. I hear that a lot. But hey, that's what comments are for here on ATCG1. I'll put links in the description to related videos and other information that you might find interesting and useful, so please check the description. Also, if you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I ask that you head to ericthecarguy.com. Also linked in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with the world. Appreciate it when you do that stuff. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.